Today's guest is a successfully certified copywriter and content strategist, a business coach, professional speaker, and curates weekly conferences for the business community in New York City. Helena Escalante is the founder and writer of EntreGurus.com, a blog with readers in over 150 countries that share ideas from the best business books that you can read in under 5 minutes. American Express has called her blog a resource for women-owned businesses. Please welcome to today's show, Helena Escalante.
Thank you. I'm delighted to be here. So thrilled.
Now, the listeners can't see you, but I want to share with you, when Helena walks into a room, she has this like bright light. And obviously you do what you love.
Absolutely. I really do.
Can you share with the listeners a little bit about what you do and what your bit of your journey was to bring you to a place where you're so obviously in alignment with what you're doing and what you love?
Of course. Happy. Thank you for this opportunity to be here. Well, let me start with the first thing. Who am I and what I do? I am a copywriter and content strategist, which means that I help entrepreneurs with 3 things: with increasing their sales, with growing their following, and with becoming the thought leaders through the power of words. So through writing and promoting whatever it is that they sell, we can get these things done.
I'm going to stop you right there.
Yes.
Okay, so you mentioned 3 things. Can you mention them again? Because I'm going to ask you a question in a moment.
Of course. So increase sales, number 1. Number 2 is increase or grow their following. And number 3, become thought leaders in their space.
Okay, which do you think is most important? Or is there one that comes before the others?
Actually, they all come together.
Oh, interesting. Could you talk a little bit more about that?
Of course. Okay, so as you become clear on your message, on who you are, and this persona that you create, I mean, you have to do some soul searching to really become clear on what your goals are and what your why is. And to do that, if I may just interject, a super fast process to do that, ask yourself why about 5 or 7 times, and you will get to the essence of that. Because if you just say, in my case, well, I want to write, but why? Well, because I like to do promotional writing. I love advertising, I love marketing, I love sales. Yes, but why? Because I want to help people. But why? And so you keep digging. And ultimately you get down to, and most of my clients and most people that I know that have gone through this process, the ultimate why is because that is my gift and I want to be able to share it with the world.
So this is the difference between your soul why and the surface why.
Oh, of course. Yes, exactly. So you start with the surface because that's the immediately apparent why. But then you dig and you get to your soul's why.
Love that.
And so anyway, so going back to what you were asking is, once we know who they are and what their soul why is, though that becomes let's say, a target. This is who I ultimately want to be because this is my gift and this is what I want to bring to the world. This is how I'm going to, in Steve Jobs' words, put a dent in the universe. So with that said, what's that dent and how are you going to get there from where you are now? So once you figure out that path and the goals in between, then that's where we come in to do these 3 things, whether you want to sell more. And selling doesn't necessarily mean selling a particular product or service. It could also be helping with some service, with a nonprofit, with whatever it is. So I'm just saying selling in general.
I think that's really important. Because I know for a lot of the listeners, even myself, the word selling, ugh.
Oh, but it conveys nightmares.
Yes, but as a copywriter, you're helping people convey what they do and share their message, which in the end, we're even selling our impact.
Our impact, your image, yourself, your brand is what you're selling. So if you don't have a service or a product, you can still, quote unquote, sell yourself. And when we have losing the fear of sales, because everybody, including myself at the beginning, I just had that like, oh my God, no, sales, we don't want to have anything to do with it, is think of it as again, selling just has this connotation of negativity or like snail,
Just slimy.
slimy. Thank you. Yeah. But if you think of a child, telling the parents, oh, can we go to the movies this weekend? The child is going to do everything in his or her power to make sure that he is taken to the movies that weekend. Now, was that not selling? That was a masterful job at selling, right?
That's brilliant. I'm going to use that. That's a really good reframe.
Or when you're with your friends, well, where do you want to go? Well, I don't know. What do you want to do? Well, yeah, I want to go out. Sure. Pizza. Well, how about Mexican? Or how about Italian? No, you know what? I really feel like I want Chinese food. So whoever makes the best selling point is the restaurant that you ultimately end up going to. So think of selling as just another aspect of being human.
Love that. And then there's also the part around content, like creating the content. Let's talk about that a little bit kind of separately.
Of course.
Because we know everyone talks about content. There is so much overwhelm. There's so much busyness. What advice do you give to someone? First, let's start with this. I work with a lot of people that say, I don't have anything interesting to share.
Ooh, yes. That is one of my favorite things to tackle because I say, you just simply haven't dug deep enough.
That's coming back to your why a little bit?
Yes, exactly. Because anybody can turn the most mundane example into a beautiful story. My point is, we've all heard that story of, the guy who got a razor and then liked it so much that he bought the company. Right? Well, if you say, well, I just like the razor or imagine if you ask that person, well, what do you do? Well, I own a razor company. Oh, okay. Well, thanks. How different does it sound if you ask him, well, what do you do? And he says, well, when you really like a product, I happened to be looking for the ideal razor one time, the razor blade, and I stumbled upon this one and I liked it so much that I bought the company. So you can turn anything, and you do not have to buy a company to.
Because all right, I can hear the listeners going,
exactly.
See, I didn't own a company. I didn't buy a company. But again.
No, but you can turn any happening, any mundane thing in a beautiful story if you just know how to give it that interesting aspect and angle.
So I love when you talked about the why. Ask the why 7 times.
Exactly.
And again, we're barraged with content. And, as a thought leader, entrepreneur, solopreneur, even as like whatever you're in today, we feel this pressure to deliver content that is meaningful and relevant. Is there a question someone can ask themselves to turn a typical day event into a story that could be of impact and influence to the people viewing their feed? Is there like another question we can ask? I don't know what it is. Maybe, how is this story in service of, is there anything you can do to help the listeners find the meaning in these seemingly mundane stories?
Of course. Well, one of the most important things is to find out who your audience is. Once you know exactly who they are, then you can relate these stories to their day-to-day activities so that they really resonate with who they are and the message gets through. For instance, when I was starting my blog, I thought that my ideal reader was going to be somebody in their, probably 20s, 30s who was starting out, who just realized that they needed little bits of information about all these business books that are out there just to consume to be better informed, right? It was not true. But nevertheless, I continued to do it. And as soon as I started getting a larger readership, I started asking them, so who are you? Tell me more about you. It so happened that my readership is women between 35 and 55 who are avid readers, and more than avid readers, they are avid learners. They're always thirsty for learning more, for bettering themselves, for growing, and also for creating a beautiful personal life as well as a professional life, because you cannot separate both.
Yeah, let's talk about this a little bit, Helena, because you have the website Entre Gurus.
Yes.
And what I think is really important for the listeners to hear is that you thought it was something, but it's ended up being something different. But the only way you got to see what the true potential was by putting it out into the world
Right.
before it was perfect,
Right.
and then asking people to be in relationship with you. I know you have struggled with perfectionism.
Oh, so much.
As have I. What do you say to the people listening who have so much to share, but they're afraid they're not putting their content out yet because it's not perfect enough, or I'm going to get judged on it? How did you overcome this to do something so big in the world?
Well, I am happy to share my story, and it's one of ups and downs. But overall, I realized that I was helping a lot of different people who were putting wonderful content out there in the world, and that my resources and my efforts were able to make them grow and achieve their goals, and that I was not able to help myself simply because I was so afraid. And when I dug deep inside, I realized that what I was afraid of was this invisible panel of judges that existed solely in my mind that were very critical of everything I did. And then I realized there is nobody else in my mind but me. So that panel of judges ended up being just me and my mind. And I thought, this cannot be, and I cannot treat myself like this, because I treat other people with utmost care and love and respect, and I help them and support them, and I am the nicest one, and I'm always looking out for them. If there are resources, I'm sending them their way. I just put my very best effort on them. How can I turn that around? I mean, continue to do that for them, of course, but focus that same energy and level of excellence, experience, and love for myself. And it was a lot of soul searching. It was not easy. But what I decided is to do an experiment. So when I gave myself the permission, and I'm using air quotes in here, the permission to experiment with treating myself well, then I actually liked it. And I thought, oh, so I don't have to be engaged in this horrendous and non-productive self-loathing and fear because of being judged. There's nobody judging. And on the contrary, if I made a mistake, well, just let's move on. Who cares? It's not the end of the world. And I also realized, and again, this is through much internal work, what I realized was that my worst case scenario was exactly where I was at.
Oh, interesting.
So if I didn't move forward, my worst case scenario would be I'm just staying where I'm at. And really, that is not that bad. So meaning I know what that is like because I'm living that right now. So I can only go uphill from here.
I think it's so powerful to hear this kind of story, Helena, from someone like yourself who is out there in the world, and we often see your overnight, again in air quotes, success, but we don't share the backstory. Mm-hmm. And, if you had not gotten over treating, had you not learned and found the ways to treat yourself with the kindness and respect that you give to others, all of this work of yours probably would not be out there. And one of my favorite thought leaders is Seth Godin.
I love Seth Godin.
And he said to be remarked upon means, to be remarkable means you will be remarked upon.
Right.
And those critics, the worst critic we'll ever have is our own inner voice.
Right.
So thank you for sharing that. It's so important because you also talk about the importance of never stop learning.
Right.
And I think a part of that journey, and I'd love you to expand a little bit on it, is saying that I don't know the answer. And that for a recovering perfectionist gives me the, shivers just even saying that. But what do you say to people who want to do things in the world and they have that, I call it the courage gap, the confidence gap, and they need to ask for help. They need to keep learning. Why do you think learning and being a continuing student of life is so important?
Well, another thing that I realized was that whenever you set a goal, you know what the end point is, but you don't know what's going to be in between. The only thing that you do know is what is your immediate next step. It's almost as if you are going on a road trip somewhere. You know where the end point is, And you can have a map and you can have a GPS, but you are not actually seeing the road until you get into the car. And not until you are in that car driving can you see if there is a detour or not. The map is not going to tell you. So once you get to the detour, well, okay, you just follow the arrows. Or you just stop at a convenience store and ask for directions. And it's metaphorically the same as you're moving forward. So you get to your next step, and then from there you take the next one and the next one. And if you don't know, you just ask for help for the immediate next step, period.
I love that. And it's challenging, though, because I'm actually going to take that conversation into curating content.
Sure.
Because I think that is overwhelming to so many people, too. They don't see a GPS. They're like, I know there's all this content out there. How can I get noticed in the world? How can I deliver? And then, so why bother? And I'm just going to put my covers over my head again.
Yes.
What steps can you share with the listeners to help them give them a little bit of a GPS when it comes to creating content and sharing it?
Well, that is an awesome topic that I could talk about for days probably. But in a nutshell, I would say you have your goal, you know where you're going. So every single action that you take, make sure that it takes you in the direction of your goal. And ask yourself, is this taking me closer or not? And in the beginning, I will have to say, it may be very hard to realize that there are so many actions that are not taking you there, but that you still have to do. But as you move forward and as you focus on your goal, you will be able to start putting aside or completely delegating or deleting even those tasks that you don't need to do. In terms of content, it's the same thing. Align it to your particular goals and make sure that you go really one step at a time.
Can we talk about that a little bit more, Helena? Because I
course.
think what happens is you're talking about creating content that's in alignment with your goals and values, I would say. But then we see the shiny over here and the sparkly over there, and we should be doing this. How do we know? Sounds so simple, but how do we know that the content we're creating is in alignment with our best future self?
Well, only you can decide. But having said that, ask yourself and ask your audience what they want. You should, at the beginning, it is really just like, just guessing, your best guess. But as you move forward, then start asking your audience what they want, and they will tell you. And that way you will know. Find them where they're at. You do not need to be in every single social media platform that exists. You do not need to create a blog, a podcast, a YouTube channel all next Monday. No, start with one, become very good at that one, and then move on to the next one.
I think that's important because I think that depending on who you're listening to, people say you need to be everywhere, you need to be on every platform, and then you just feel overwhelmed and undersatisfied because you cannot, it's impossible as a human being to keep up. We're not technology, we're human beings. With that, how would you suggest that someone decides which platform that they want to go on? Is it the one that they enjoy the most? Or again, is it asking the people they are in relation with, where would you like to see me? I mean, I love, because you keep talking about asking, so important. Because what I also think for some of us, we think that if I ask, that means I'm not the expert. No. We know that's not true, but that could be like an old tape. Is there something that you would suggest for people, deciding which platform we should go on?
Well, I always think that you should pick the platform where your audience is at. If you are looking for millennials, go where those millennials are at. If you're looking for senior citizens, go where they're at. You cannot find, say, professionals in a better network than LinkedIn, for example. So if you are selling B2B, then go on LinkedIn. If your audience is, dancers, go to probably Facebook or YouTube where you can have videos of them. So it really depends, but go to the platform where they're at, because that's the way in which you are going to connect, which is ultimately what you want. And fittingly, if I may share, I came up with a process, of course, from a copywriter. The acronym is WRITE, but that has helped me really hone in the process to get the content done. And so the W stands for all these questions that you have to ask at the beginning. So it's who, what, when, where, and especially why. And we've talked about the why, so I won't repeat that. And then the R stands for research.
Can we go back a little bit?
Of course.
The who, what, when.
Uh-huh.
Is
Where?
this about your audience? The who, what, when, where? Who is your audience? What are they doing? Where can you find them? Or is it
Right.
more internal questions?
It's both.
Okay.
It's both. Initially, is that soul searching? It's for you to reinvent yourself. So actually, let me take that process, because that process works well for creating content, but also for creating yourself. So let me just backtrack and give you the first. It's the exact same acronym, all right? So it's WRITE. When you're creating yourself, it's the same: who, what, when, where, and why. So that way you determine what you want and your goal. Then the R stands for your results. So the goals that we were talking about. Where are you going? What is that point in the map ahead, right? The I stands for iceberg. And the reason why I call it an iceberg is because we've all heard that we need to be unique. And going back to the thing of, well, my story it's not that unique. You just have to dig and find. And I'll just share a quick example. This is very well known in the copywriting industry, but there was this gentleman, a copywriter, that was hired by a beer company to come in and put together some promotional materials for them. And so as part of his research, he went in and was looking at the factory and realized that the bottles of beer were being sterilized not once, not twice, not three, but 4 times. And he said, "Oh my God, this is amazing. Why do you do that?" "Oh, because we want them obviously to be very clean, but also for the purity of the beer. And also we filter the air so that it gets brewed without impurities." And so they started saying all these things. And he said, "Why don't you tell this to your audience?" And they said, "Well, everybody does it, but not everybody knows it." So he went on to share with their audience what they were doing to make that beer the purest that it was, which this is, I don't know, 80 years ago or whenever this was. But it went on to be the biggest selling brand of beer at the time. And that's what I mean. Just if you have an iceberg, the tip may look like, it's not all that important. It may be boring. It's not. But just dig below the surface. What can you find that makes you unique? And even if it's something that everyone else does, but not everyone else says, that may be your own angle. And also always remember that your own mixture of skills and knowledge makes you unique. So I am a copywriter who brings a love of business, entrepreneurship, business mentoring, languages, because I come from a family of translators, so I have done this as well in different languages. All of these things that make me myself. I know, for instance, another copywriter who is in my same mastermind, who is a former baseball, the major league player. So he brings with him this unique aspect to it. And then there's another one who is a symphony composer. So he brings in this aspect. So my point is, yes, we're all technically copywriters, but we each bring our own sets of talents and skills that makes us different.
And I think that's so important that we hear, like, be authentically you. And then, like, again, people at home are like, well, he was a baseball player and she's already, this. But I also think that sometimes what we've struggled with, and we've gotten through it, this is not therapy, we've gotten through it. Sometimes our struggles are actually a big part of the story that can make us unique and also inspire and help others along their journey.
Oh, absolutely. And that leads me, it's a perfect segue for the next letter, which is the T, which is the transformation. Think about your transformation and where you are now and where you have been, and what was that process? And also where you want to go and how you need to transform yourself to become that person. So think of all those things as you're creating yourself and this wonderful future you that is awaiting. And then the last letter, which is E, is execute for excellence. Not perfection, but excellence. So just move forward into that direction, and just remember that action cures fear, is the antidote to fear. So just get going and the fear will disappear, because you will see that there's really nothing to fear, that it's all in our minds. And so if I may turn that, just to complete the answer, to the process of creating content or writing itself, the W is the same. Who, what, when, where, and especially the why of your target audience. The R is your research. Again, the research, whether it's you going through the beer factory tour or you thinking differently, and also setting the results, what it is that you're trying to do. Are you asking them to subscribe to your list? Are you asking them to buy your product? Are they asking you to set up a consultation? Whatever it is that you're asking, just know what that result, that call to action is going to be. And then the I is the same, the iceberg. Find that special aspect, that unique thing that makes you you, and also enter, in this case, the conversation that your prospect is having in his or her mind. Because how many times have we read something that we think, oh my God, are they reading my mind? How do they know what I'm thinking or feeling? It's that dialogue that is going on that you have to somehow enter so that you can really make your message resonate. And then the T, then in this case for content, goes for type. Type away, in the sense that this is your time to be creative. Do not edit yet. Type everything. Excuse me if I use this language, but one of my mentors told me that it's not even a rough draft. It's what is called a vomit draft. So it's almost like, oh my God, you're throwing everything out there so that you can start with a lot of different material. And then you go into editing mode, because in copywriting, it's not uncommon to edit, 20 times, 50 times, until you can finally find the message that resonates the most and produces the more sales or the more calls to action, if you may, the objective that you want. But it's also very important to say that the part of the brain that creates or that writes is completely different from the one that edits. One adds and the other subtracts. So you cannot be both at the same time. So do not try to write and edit in the same pass, because you're not going to be able to produce the best content.
Yeah, no, that's a fascinating note there, because I think why so many people get stuck is they don't do the vomit, let's say, or they just don't even get the imperfect, content out there. We're so busy trying to perfect it. Right. We get stuck in our own loop of negativity, and just get it out there, get feedback, and then you can get closer to what your audience's desires are and how you can help them even more effectively.
Right. And another thing that is important to know is that, as with any creative process and with any written piece, at some point you have to let it go out there. Meaning, yes, you can edit and edit and edit and edit for 10 years if you want, but you really need to let it go. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be polished. Nowadays, you can just put it out there. And the beauty of the internet is that you can always go back and change it,
or
delete it, whatever you want. So no, there's really nothing to fear and much more to gain on the other side.
What's the E? Because then I wanted to ask you about words versus pictures, because you just brought something up for me to.
Yes. So the E in the acronym, you mean? Yes. Oh, in here it's edit for excellence.
Oh, perfect.
So in the creating your person is executing that plan, and then in here it's just editing.
I love it. We'll have these acronyms in the show notes too,
so
wonderful. You can remember them.
Awesome.
So you mentioned the power of editing and writing, and
yes.
then it's also, I've heard, a picture is worth 1,000 words.
Right.
What are your thoughts when it comes to content, whether I should do more images or more writing, or images with writing or without? What is your opinion on that?
Oh my God, you just touched on something that I love to talk about. Okay. If you have just one picture by itself, you don't know what that picture is referring to. If you have just words, they may look ugly. They may be unformatted. They may not have all the bells and whistles in the world. But what happens is that those words are still very powerful and they can still sell and instill the prospect or the reader to get to that call to action, right? So if you can combine them both, then definitely that is a home run in my baseball friends' words. But if you are just going to have like these, there are some websites out there that are gorgeous, filled with images, but unfortunately you get there and you're like, what are they selling? Or some commercials that you see on TV and you're like, what are they selling? Is this, you see, if you just put it on mute and you see this couple in the bathtubs and you're like, is this for a meditation retreat or is this
I gotta say, that commercial has always confused me.
Exactly. So my point is somebody, I believe, was a little bit more interested in creating something artsy in that sense than in conveying the message. In here, you want, again, just going back to being very practical, you want to convey your message in a way that it's aligned to your goals because we don't have time to waste or enormous budgets to give to advertising agencies to play with our money and create artsy, beautiful works of advertising, right? So in this sense, that's why I'm thinking, let's go with something that is very practical. Let's just align everything that we do to our goals and let's stick at first with one platform before moving on to different ones.
Yeah, I love it. I think what a lot of us get overwhelmed with is we're so busy trying to put content out there. We're not spending the time to ask the powerful questions.
Right.
To make sure the content is in alignment with where we even want to be 5 years from now.
Exactly. Well, and if I may, I would love to invite your audience. I am putting together a workshop on content precisely to help you. Literally, you come in with a blank piece of paper and you leave with 52 weeks of planned content. And I will leave the link for you so that you can add it on the show notes. But right now, you can definitely go to contentcampintensive.com. So it's a content camp and it's super intensive. So contentcampintensive.com and join the notification list, the application. It's because it's a very small group. It's by application only to make sure that I can definitely bring the most value to you and that you will benefit from this the most. So join the notification list, and once applications are open, I'll definitely let you know.
I love that. And then for listeners that have ideas they want to share, and they just don't know where to start, what would you suggest as one action that they could take today to help shift their mind, from I do have something interesting to share, I'm not going to wait for it to be perfect, to getting it out into the world?
The best advice that I can give you is think of it as an experiment. Because if you think, I'm going to start a blog and then that means that I need to be blogging every day for the rest of my life or for at least 10 years and stick with, no. Give yourself permission to blog one time. That's it. If you like it, then move it to 2 times. Then move it to a 3rd time. So try it out as an experiment. Give yourself permission to just test it out and see how it goes.
I love that. I think we put so many expectations on ourselves. Like, I'm going to blog for the next 5 years without fail.
Like you're committing to doing this the rest of your life. No,
and
nothing could be farther from the truth. Just the mere thought of it is just overwhelming.
So listeners, no more expectations, experiments.
Yes.
I like that, experiments. Helena, there is so much great information.
Thank you.
It's just just the tip of the iceberg, per se. Where can our listeners stay in touch with you and find out more about what you do?
I'll be delighted if they could touch base with me. So there are several ways to reach me. Of course, via email, which is Helena, Helena, at Helena Escalante, and the last name is spelled ESCALANTE.com, or Helena, Helena, at EntreGurus.com, which is my blog. And that is a mixture. It's a blended word of entrepreneurship and gurus. So
it's the copywriter.
Yeah. EntreGurus.com.
I love that. Thank you so much for the gift of your time, energy,
you.
Enthusiasm, and also helping our listeners write their own story. Because when you're writing your own story, you're always going to trust the next chapter.
Definitely. Thank you so much.